Greetings. My name is Dr. Waddell Brooks, Sr., your host, and this is Lake County Community Forum. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been hearing a lot about NAACP because that's an acronym for National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. We're very fortunate to have with us the recently elected president of the Lake County branch of the NAACP, and she's going to tell us all about mission, goals, and objectives, and how to get in contact with the NAACP and how you can get involved. Good evening, Dr. Leconte.
Good evening, Dr. Brooks. My pleasure to be here. Good evening, Lake County, family and friends. It has been my goal to really sit down with Dr. Brooks so that we could share our story regarding the NAACP, and I will allow him to take the lead now to ask certain questions, and I will follow his lead.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Leconte is a teacher, she's an administrator, opera, jazz, and gospel singer, a church pianist, and organist. And like I mentioned at the top of the program, she was recently elected president of the Lake County branch of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Dr. Leconte, first of all, I'd like for you to tell our listening audience about your personal and professional background.
Okay, I really don't like talking about myself, if you will, in that respect. However, I started out with aspirations of becoming a music teacher / singer in my hometown of Mobile, Alabama. I was motivated and inspired by a lady who does live in Chicago, an opera singer, Joyce A. Carter. So Joyce ventured over to Xavier University in New Orleans. And 4 years later, I followed her. I watched her stage presence and the singing that she did. We both had music teachers from the high school. Mr. J.D. Whitfield was our primary influence. And so fast forwarding, I left Central High School in Mobile, attended Xavier University, 5 years, sang in different organizations outside of the school. Winter Marsalis' dad was one of my mentors. I sang in his jazz trio to work my way through college. My second year of college, I think it was, I changed from a music major to a political science major, and I changed back because during those times were kind of like perilous times in my hometown of Mobile, Alabama, and New Orleans as well. So I became active in the social justice movement then. And that was, I would have to say, 1969, 1970, when I became extremely active in those kinds of carryings on. I would sometimes go to different marches in Mobile without getting permission from my parents because my mom was sort of like reluctant to allow me to go. She believed in what we believed in terms of the movement. However, she was afraid, she was fearful, and rightfully so. You've known the history of the Edmund Pettus bridges and all those things. And also I attended school with Vivian Malones' sister. Margie Malone and I were in school together in high school. Fast forwarding from New Orleans, I came up to Evanston, Illinois / Chicago to attend Northwestern University to earn my master's degree in music. And then I studied further until I earned the doctorate of education degree. I've taught for more than 43 years. I retired from the Chicago Public Schools in June 2017, and was asked to take on a role in the Milwaukee Public Schools, teaching children, which I've done now for the last 3 years. And so I love educating, I love advocacy. I became involved in our Lake County branch, I would say more than 12, 13 years ago.
Okay, tell our listening audience a little bit about Mobile, Alabama. What prompted your interest to get involved with the civil rights movement, Mobile?
Well, for one thing, the situation that occurred with Vivian Malones Jones, well, when she and James Hood were met at the door by our great governor at the time, and I say great because he felt he was great, George Wallace, and he stood at the door and blocked them from entering the University of Alabama. Mm-hmm. And so we reacted to that because at that time we were maybe 12 or 13 years old, and we would ask Margie, how do you feel, with this governor stopping your sister from going to school? At that time, we didn't know that we weren't allowed to go to the university there. It was amazingly, unseemingly the wrong thing for them to have done. And so that catapulted my interest in wanting to be involved with civil rights in a big way. And then secondly, several events occurred that you can equate to the song Strange Fruit by Billie Holiday when she referenced the hangings and things of that nature. Mm-hmm. I never saw a hanging up close, but they did occur in my area where I lived, and I just thought it was wrong. And then thirdly, I didn't like riding with my dad in the car. And we as children, there were 4 of us at the time, wanted to stop and get ice cream and water. And the water fountain said, white. And they said, color. Mm-hmm. And so many times with me being the kind of individual that I was, even at a very young age, and I said, I just want water, whichever fountain I reach first. And we would get in the car and we would ask our dad, why didn't you allow us? And he would say, oh, no, don't drink water there. And he would tell us the reason why. And so having lived through those kinds of systemic racist things that are going on that still to this day may be interested in becoming part of that, because the only way that you can affect change is to be a part of the change.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned Vivian Malone's sister passed away recently. Historically, her sister was the wife of President Obama's Attorney General. I forget, who was his name?
Yes, Sharon is married to Attorney General Eric Holder.
Eric Holder, right.
And right. I didn't really realize that connection until you actually mentioned it to me a few weeks ago. Mm-hmm. That they married. I did not know Sharon. Sharon was younger than Margie and I. Mm-hmm. And then Vivian was older than we were. But there was something about that case in Mobile that just made us all proud. Also, people in Mobile who made us just very, very proud, other than my parents, because I was very proud of my parents, my mom especially, mm-hmm. Mrs. Henry. But people like Hank Aaron, who broke racial barriers. And so the Joyce Carter, the young lady that I mentioned, who still lives in Chicago and very prominent in the links, in the deltas and all of these things. But all of us, if I can recall, were interested in civil rights. Mm-hmm. We would sneak to go to the beaches in Pensacola on the sections that we shouldn't have been in, just to make a statement, if you will. Mm-hmm. And so our parents were not always approving of that because they were afraid for us, but we knew, again, in order to make a change, you have to be the change. You have to vote the change.
Tell us about the origin of the NAACP. Give us a little history.
The NAACP, from what I recall, was started in New York, February 12th, 1909. And it's an interesting story because many people don't realize that although it has a name, NAACP, there were many whites involved in the NAACP. And you know of the race riots that happened in our area in Springfield, Illinois. I learned about those, later after reading about those. And so I've always been a history buff. And I've always been one to read biographies and to study and read about people like Nelson Mandela, Julian Bond, Thurgood Marshall. And although they were male advocacy individuals, they were very strong. And I said, well, I want to grow up and be able to affect change like these gentlemen can. So in every city where I've lived, I've been a part of advocacy. In every city where I've lived, I've always voted since I can remember. I don't ever remember not voting as an adult, ever.
For historical purposes, and
yes,
individuals can go to the computer right now and they'll find out that there was a white female that started the NAACP. She read about the trouble that was happening in Springfield, Illinois that you just mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And she got together with a group to start what we, and I can't call the names of all of the men and women that was with her in New York. As a matter of fact, it was Niagara first in 1908, and then they moved to New York in 1909 and started the group that we call now the NAACP.
NAACP. And I just read about them an hour ago. Now, I will be 70 on my birthday tomorrow, so I have
congratulations.
Thank you. Very short-term memory, but those individuals were wonderful. Many of them were attorneys. They were lawyers. Just last Saturday morning, there was a meeting of the National Board of the NAACP in Maryland, online, virtually, of course, because of the pandemic. And many of the representatives online from their different cities are still to this day attorneys. And so that just goes to show you how we have prepared ourselves over the years to study what the laws say we can do and what we cannot do in order to fight systemic racism, which is, I suppose, the primary reason that I'm here. We have to have people who are learning, who are educated, and therefore, to that end, education is a serious component of what we are about in terms of our Lake County branch. And so you cannot change your history if you don't know your history.
That's a good point you raised. Why is there a need for an NAACP in Lake County?
There's a need for an NAACP in Lake County so that we can serve as advocates for criminal justice reform, so that we can serve, when I say we, collectively, our committees and our officers and our members, the body, because no one person can do anything by themselves. And so we want to serve as advocates for educational reform. I got a meeting once I leave you today at 7 p.m. with the state educational chairs. I've also been appointed recently to serve as education chair. And I don't take that role lightly. We have to be able to question our teachers, I'm a teacher, our superintendents, but more importantly, our legislators. You know, they need to understand that money shouldn't just go to certain districts who don't need the money. Okay, as you know, Title I funding all over the country has pretty much decreased since 2008. And so unless the NAACP is out front advocating for equal funding, unless we're out there advocating for a moratorium on charter schools, that equality would not emerge as quickly as it should. And I know people are thinking that we feel that we can just dictate. Our job is not to dictate. Our job is to serve as advocates. Even now that has come into play is our environmental concerns. The NAACP Lake County is definitely concerned about that because all over the country, as you've recognized, the toxins that have emerged in our communities are primarily placed in our predominantly African-American communities. And that's why we as a people now fighting the COVID pandemic are having problems with such a large number of people dying in our communities because we already had all of these underlying conditions based on our environmental upbringing. You know, in Chicago or in Philadelphia places, it could have been lead poisoning years ago. When you look at Flint, Michigan, what happened to the water a few years ago regarding that. So the NAACP is on call 24/7 to address all of those concerns. In addition to which, at this time while I'm on, I would like for everyone to please pick up a pen or a computer and write to the Secretary of Education, take action to ask him to consider canceling the exams for this year, the assessments that we have in the spring. We're concerned as a body that our students are already stressed due to the pandemic, and we feel that those assessments should be canceled. So that's just a little of the work that we're doing. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Doctor. I'm sorry.
Also, COVID-19, I think you, NWCs, you're concerned about that too, that Blacks are getting a fair share of the injection.
Right. We want to educate our community regarding COVID-19 because we too have to take responsibility of going to get the shots when they're made available. And I happen to know There are some of us who are reluctant to go to get this shot because of the experiment many years ago, if you can call it that, that happened down in Tuskegee. So you can understand a reluctance of sort. However, the NAACP statewide has had several meetings. I attended one of the meetings where there were doctors on the panel who are advocating that we all take the shot when it becomes available. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to say that I've taken the first dose. I will take the second one this Saturday.
Great.
And so far, I haven't had any problems, but I know it can just be an individual thing. I understand that, but I believe it's better to take the shot than not to take the shot.
I also would encourage African Americans to take the shot too. The wife and I took it last week, and we take our second one in next month. You know.
Oh, that's wonderful, Doctor. That is wonderful. And I know we're looking at the aging. Those doses can impact you adversely, even if you are probably much younger than the two of us are, and we're still in our prime, so to speak. Mm-hmm. However, it depends on your genetics. It depends on whether or not you're taking your vitamin C, vitamin D, all of those things. And so, needless to say, we just cannot predict every outcome. The data does not exist for all of that. But the NAACP, to that end, if I might jump in and say this, is hoping that we can apply for and receive a grant for our community that will assist with the COVID-19 tracing. So I cannot speak to that in its entirety yet, but you were at our meeting last night because you're part of our board. So we're trying to work on that as well.
I'd like to mention just for briefly, in the South, churches played a great role in activities of the NAACP. Or have you contacted the churches to ensure that this continues?
Yes, I have.
In other words, the struggle continues.
Oh, yes, I have. Yes, I have. We're fired up and ready to go. As a matter of fact, I appointed Dr. A.C. Conley as the chair of the Religious Affairs Committee, working along with Dr. Conley as our chaplain for the Lake County branch is Reverend Wilcoxon, Reverend Gerald Wilcoxon. And the two of them are in the midst of planning an hour of power, so to speak, of prayer. Because years ago, the NAACP did function in that capacity. Most of the meetings of our organizations were held at different churches. And we are asking pastors to come in and help us out. And even if you're not a pastor, if you're a layperson, I don't feel that we can do without the pastors because they are connected. And we want to go across all economical spectrums. I'd like to invite at this time, everyone to join the NAACP, no matter your race, creed, or color. If you're interested in the work of social justice and civil rights and civil advocacy, quality education, criminal police reform. It doesn't mean that people dislike the police because they're police. They do not like some of the actions that have been taken.
Mm-hmm. Well, what's the eligibility to join the NAACP?
I'm glad you asked that question. Glad you asked. The eligibility to join the NAACP is to be willing to serve, willing to work. It is a position that requires boots on the ground and not just a name on your resume. Mm-hmm. It requires going into the community, serving and volunteering in any capacity, becoming someone who can pay your membership. Let's go back and say membership fee. The membership fee to join is minimal. It's only $30 per year. Mm. We do encourage you, if you'd like to, and if you can afford to, pay life memberships. The civil life membership is $750. We have a new membership chair, and we are new as a body in Lake County because we are not working together for the last 2 years, but now we're up and running again. And our membership chair's name is Felicia Jordan. And that information can be sent to me. If you're interested in joining, just send me an email and I will forward that information to Felicia. My email address, may I?
Yes.
Give that here? Yes. My email address is SANNIKKI at AOL.com. Secondly, I will repeat that again, SANNIKKI at AOL.com. Secondly, we're proud to say we have a new P.O. Box that you can reach us. If you've been trying to write to P.O. Box 272, that has not existed for a couple of years. Our P.O. Box address, if I may give that.
Okay.
It's P.O. Box 9024, Waukegan, Illinois, 60079. You can go to the NAACP.org website, the national website, print out an application, mail it to our P.O. Box, and we'd be happy to process your application. We'd rather you do that than just pay online, because when you mail the application to us directly, we keep a better tab of our membership log. Mm-hmm. And so I hope I answered your question about what is needed. The interest must be there. You must be willing to work without pay, so to speak.
I may add to that, the wife and I are paid up life membership members.
And I know that, and I want to congratulate you for that. And
1979.
Yes, and yes, also, yes. I don't know if our community knows that you were one of the former presidents, yes, in the area. And we so admire you and Dr. Brooks for all of the work that you've done. When I came to the area, I moved to the area in 1974. Mm-hmm. And at one point, my daughter was enrolled in your wife's daycare center. And I've always known her to do that kind of service work. And that's what we need. We need more Daisy Brookses and more Waddell Brookses in the NAACP. May
I just mention, you're promulgating all the information about the NAACP, but I just want to mention two things, yes, to show you how important it is. The late Edwin Ford and I went to the North Shore Garden of Memories and found out there were no Blacks buried in North Shore Garden of Memories. Mm-hmm. It was in their deed, that it was only for white inhabitants only. Of course, that was the case. I think most people know Penny Brown, the late Penny Brown. She was the president at that time, though. Mm-hmm. But that was resolved because it was illegal, even though it was in the deed, you know. So that was resolved. The other thing I like to mention to show you that the need for the NAACP, when I like to the late Mayor Kukla saw Ford and I coming, he said, "Oh, you're gonna put the NAACP on me now." So he knew we represent the NAACP. So we had no problem at all. We went to the state's attorney's office and we talked to him, stated that most Blacks are incarcerated. The great percentage are incarcerated, but we have no Black assistant state's attorneys. And the state's attorney at that time stated that, "Brooks, if you find me one, I'll hire him." That was his escape. So I found him one. And God works in mysterious ways. I had lunch with one that just graduated from John Marshall Law School in Chicago. Okay. We attended the Chicago Metropolitan Open Communities. So I mention that because people may know that. And we had lunch with him. He said, "Brooks, I'll do it for you."
Wonderful. And then that's what we need.
He commuted from East Chicago, Indiana for 1 year. But he'd say, "Brooks, I can't do it anymore. I did it for you, but I can't commute anymore." But that's how, you know, NAACP is not, it's an organization. You mentioned it's composed of all races, right?
Absolutely. You were in our meeting last night. There's a gentleman who called me on this past Sunday morning, who actually came to the meeting last night. He wants his son to become a part of that. We need many freedom fighters, not just one or two, and not just any one color, because if you notice, in terms of NAACP, when you go to the forums online and legal redress, we are able to assist anyone of any color, and that's why we invite you. Yes, it started out as the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, but if you know the history that I know, and I know that you do know it, We have to serve as advocates for everyone in our school systems here in North Chicago, and the school systems here in Waukegan, even in Vernon Hills and Barrington, and because those areas may appear as if nothing is going wrong there, but sometimes there are things that go wrong there. Even before I became president of this organization, the point that we have to drive home is that we want people who can serve. We want people who are not fearful of saying and getting into good trouble, saying things that will get you into good trouble. Mm-hmm. Because as the late John Lewis said, you have to sometimes get into good trouble in order to make changes. I would like to, before this conversation ends, I would like to recognize the fact that the NAACP at the national level is filing a lawsuit against those congressmen who tried to overturn our votes. I had a serious problem with that. I still have a serious problem with that. As you know, today in Lake County, it's the primary election day, and we're hoping that people will get out and vote before the end of the day today. But not just for this election, but for every election. Even better still, we want as many people possible to start running for the school board elections, to start asking about becoming and taking the sheriff's exams in Zion and North Chicago, in Round Lake Beach, and other areas as well. And so we would like to invite people to chair. I'm looking for chairs, and I'm throwing my little spiel out before you leave, Doctor. I need people to chair the Criminal Justice Committee. I need people for the Environmental Committee. People and persons. I say people because it takes 3 individuals to make up a committee. Mm-hmm. We need a chair for the Political Action Committee. We need a chair, and this is for a woman. We need a chair for the women in the NAACP. For the youth, we definitely need a chair for ADSO. Mm-hmm. So although I am the president, I am not the NAACP alone. I need people to help us. We will meet on the 4th Mondays of the month at 7 p.m. Currently, it's virtual. Our offices are myself as president, Deborah Lewis. You can write to Deborah Lewis for any information you have. I can give that information if you send an email to me. She's our secretary. Mm-hmm. Stella Jones is the treasurer. And we have many others who've joined us. There were at least 33 people online last night. If you multiply that, if everybody brought in 1 member per month, we'd be in the thousands a year from now. So please join the NAACP. Even if you cannot attend the meetings, we need you to join to support us, because that gives us delegates at the national convention based on our memberships.
You mentioned national convention. What about the structure of the NAACP? You mentioned about the state, you have mm-hmm. a regional, you have the national and staff convention, workshops, awards, and so.
Yes. There's so many things. Our umbrella, our parent organization is at NAACP in Hope, Maryland. That's the parent organization. Then for our state president here in Illinois is Teresa Haley, Haley. Mm-hmm. Under her leadership, there are at least 19 units or branches, if you will. We are branches and we're not called boards. I want to emphasize that. We are branches.
Well, we're going to have another show, and I'm really happy, excited that you are fired up and ready to go.
Yes.
We're going to have our time is run. I'd like to just mention about those that may be white citizens that may, why should I join? Well, the goal is to level the playing field. If we start on the goal line and you're on a 50-yard line, who's going to win the race? So in order to go to the next level, we have to start even. And because of the 13th, 14th, the 15th Amendment to the Constitution, because Blacks were 3/5 of a person when the Constitution was ratified. And,
please don't remind me of that. That's another story. That's another show. Okay. I just get so upset when I think about how we've been mistreated as a people.
We're going to do it. We're going to do it soon. Okay. Soon and very soon. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been talking with Dr. Sandra W. Leconte, EDD, teacher, administrator, opera, jazz, and gospel singer, well-rounded church pianist and organist. And she is a person that you should know. I just have to remember, she recently was elected president of the Lake County branch NAACP. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Lake County Community Forum. My name is Dr. Waddell Brooks Sr., your host.